Have you ever felt that the universe puts you in the right place at the right time to fulfill a destiny you never imagined? Get ready, because today's story is about one of those moments. It's one of those that shows how wildlife, in its brutality and beauty, can teach us about the essence of who we are. And the most shocking part? The initial impression is just the tip of the iceberg. Imagine for a moment the vastness of Kruger National Park in South Africa. It's not just a place, it's a universe of sounds and smells. The scent of wet earth after the rain, the rustling of tall grass moving in the wind, the distant roar of a lion that sends shivers down your spine. It's in this setting, where life and death dance side by side, that our hero, Ranger David Moyo, was making his daily rounds. A man of few words and keen observation. He thought he had seen it all, but what he would find that day, huddled and tied to a tree, would shake his certainties and change his life forever. From that moment on, he would no longer be just a ranger. He would become the last hope for a desperate living being, the unlikely link between human cruelty and nature's redemption. But who was behind that heinous act? And more importantly, would he be able to save the fragile life in his hands? A silence in the savannah can be deafening. Have you ever noticed? It was almost 6 in the morning, and the sun was rising lazily, tinging the sky with reddish hues that reflected on the tall grass. It was in this peaceful setting that David sensed something was wrong. He heard a sound that didn't belong there, the metallic creaking of a chain. As he approached, the sound became clearer, and he came across the scene that broke his heart into 1,000 pieces. There, chained to a sturdy thorn tree, was a young lioness, so thin that her ribs outlined her skin like painful strokes. The sight was so shocking that he almost stopped breathing. It was a poaching crime worthy of a nightmare. The lioness, with eyes glazed with fear and hunger, could barely move. And here's a curiosity we often forget. Lionesses are social hunters, but when they are alone and injured, they lose part of their self-confidence. They are loyal to the group, not to their own isolated survival. Whoever looks at the image of such an animal, trapped and starving, might think it's the end. But in David's heart, something different ignited. What he saw was not a monster, but a victim. And would you have the courage to act like that when fear could paralyze you? Taking a deep breath, David cautiously approached, smelling the strong scent of dry vegetation under the sun. The rope that bound the lioness's neck was thick, and he knew she could react. But at that moment, the instinct to protect wildlife spoke louder than fear. He acted like a true animal rescue professional, with calm and precision, carefully cutting the ties. The sharp blade in his hand trembled slightly, but he focused. The dull thud of the freed rope falling to the ground was the sweetest sound he heard that day. Getting her to the ranger station was a race against time. The lioness, too weak to resist, allowed herself to be guided to the back of the pickup truck. Every movement of the vehicle was agony for her body. At the station, the lioness received emergency treatment. Can you believe that the animal medical team used intravenous fluids and antibiotics, almost like in a human hospital? The treatment room had that antiseptic smell, mixed with the strong aroma of grass and bush that came from the lioness. David stayed by her side, whispering words of comfort, while life slowly returned to her body. If you love stories like this, leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss any. But the truth is that the rescue was just the beginning. The first week was a struggle. The lioness, named Lara by David, refused food and treatment. Every time he approached with a bowl of water, all he saw was a mixture of fear and aggression. In her eyes, we, with our dogs and cats, think we know what it's like to care for a skittish animal. But imagine the weight of a metal bowl and the weight of the responsibility of feeding a wild predator. It was a daily test of patience, a mutual overcoming. But David knew her recovery depended on his stubborn persistence. Gradually, fear turned into a wary acceptance. And here's an incredible curiosity. The purring of a wild cat, like a lioness, is not just a sound of happiness. It can also be used to calm itself in times of stress. Can you believe that? One afternoon, while David was cleaning her wounds, he felt something. That low, vibrant sound coming from Lyra's chest seemed like a sign from the universe. It was a soft noise, almost imperceptible, but it said a lot. It was the first sign of trust, the first step of an unlikely friendship. The days followed, turning into weeks. The routine was simple but intense. Wake up, prepare the food, clean the enclosure, and above all, be present. David didn't just feed Lyra. He would sit on the ground of the enclosure, at a safe distance, and read a book aloud. At first, she ignored him, but over time, he noticed she would listen, tilting her head to one side. He spent hours talking to her, observing her quirks, like the funny way she would tilt her head to drink water. Who has never felt that an animal understands your soul? This coexistence, this unilateral loyalty that David offered, was transforming Lyra from a fragile creature into a partner in overcoming. The connection was almost palpable, and the pain in her eyes was slowly being replaced by a glimmer of gratitude. Her recovery was visible. Her coat regained its shine, her weight increased, and her muscle strength returned. The thin body, which before looked like an armor of bones, now showed the muscles of a majestic animal. The paw strikes she gave on the ground, once weak and clumsy, began to have the weight of a queen. Stop and feel this. The smell of wildlife returning to the air. David's mission was accomplished, but now came the hardest part of the story. Because for wildlife, the best ending isn't always staying close. Time has a way of speeding up when we're doing well, doesn't it? After a month of intensive care, Lyra's body was restored, but her mind still needed help. That was the hardest moment for David. He knew her rehabilitation wouldn't be complete as long as she was dependent on humans. Think about it. It's like us. When we see a child grow up, the greatest proof of love is knowing when to let them go so they can live their own life. The day Lyra was transferred to a large adaptation enclosure was painful. The metallic sound of the gate closing behind her was the sound of a farewell. There, she had to relearn how to be a lioness. Little by little, the hunting instincts, dormant due to hunger and trauma, returned. And here's a surprising fact. A lioness in full form can run at almost 80 kilometers per hour, but only over short distances. Lyra needed to relearn the burst of speed and hunting strategy to become the queen she once was. David spent his afternoons watching her from afar, smelling the scent of dust raised by her paws. She was hunting, growling, defending her space. That was the real Lyra. And have you ever wondered if what imprisons you isn't the fear of being free? The day of the final release arrived. The morning sun warmed the savannah, and David was nervous. He felt that pit in his stomach of someone about to make a life-changing decision. Lyra was transported to the central conservation area, where wildlife is denser and more protected. They opened the gate of the transport cage, and Lyra hesitated for a second. She looked at David one last time. We don't need words to understand a farewell, do we? If there's a lesson we can learn from this, it's about the importance of letting go so that the other can reconnect with their true nature. And then she left. The air was pure, with the unmistakable scent of bush and freedom. Lyra turned, but didn't look back. She ran fast, disappearing into the vegetation, without looking back. David stood there, feeling an emptiness in his chest, but immense pride. Her journey was complete. His journey, however, was not. Because the story still had a chapter missing. And the ending, believe me, would be about Justice Dot. You know, We tend to think the story ends when we save the day. But the truth is that, in real life, the fight continues. While David felt that mixture of relief and longing for Lyra to have returned to the wild, the pain of injustice still consumed him. What he saw was more than the cruelty of a hungry animal. It was a poaching crime. And believe me, this is a billion-dollar business, with criminal networks as complex as those of drug trafficking. That's why David knew the story would only have a happy ending with justice. The loud crackle of the patrol car radio began to give a new purpose to his search. He worked side by side with the South African police, who had been investigating the poaching network for months. The lioness was the proof they needed. The collaboration between the rangers and the police force intensified, creating a link between the practical knowledge of the savannah and the strategy of an intelligence operation. We underestimate the power of cooperation, but it's when we unite what we know that the impossible happens. And you, have you ever joined someone to fight for something bigger than yourself? The operation was a success. Smelling the metallic scent of a cell, the criminals were caught and confronted with the evidence, the main piece being the lioness's condition. The sentences were severe, and the news spread like wildfire through the region. Their imprisonment didn't bring Lyra back, of course, but it brought something essential, the feeling that, yes, good can win. The lesson here is simple but powerful. Every small act of kindness can have a ripple effect. Justice is a daily construction. In the end, David returned to making his rounds in the savannah, now with the certainty that the fight was worth it. Feeling the warm wind on his face and the sun's rays on his skin, he wondered where it might be. Seeing her free was the greatest reward. The emptiness in his chest was still there, but it was an emptiness of longing, not of sadness. And the story of Lyra and David became a symbol of hope for all who work for conservation. The journey of David and Lyra reminds us that heroism is not in grand feats, but in the small choices we make every day. In the courage to reach out to those in need, in the patience to care, and in the wisdom to let go. Lyra, who could have been just another victim, became a symbol of hope and overcoming, and proof that every life counts. Her story shows us that the beauty of wildlife and humanity can walk together. What David did was an act of pure loyalty to life, and the friendship he built with the lioness is proof that love knows no boundaries. And you, have you ever had an animal that changed your life in an unexpected way? Tell us in the comments. Your experience can inspire someone else. If this story warmed your heart, the next video suggested by YouTube will move you even more. Don't miss it. It's an incredible story about a guide dog that saved its blind owner's life.